All right. Thank you, Amberly. Thanks for that really nice intro. And welcome, everyone, to our webinar. We appreciate you being here. And we hope that you'll hop into the discussion, like Amberly said, because we are going to be trying to answer your questions real time. I'd like to introduce our speakers today. I'm going to be the host, but we have Nichelle Yazzie and Sam Stroman, who are going to be helping us guide this conversation. Nichelle, would you introduce yourself a little bit so everybody can get to know you a little bit?
Yeah, I'm Nichelle Yazzie. I am a HR business partner and DEI manager here at Awardco, and I'm super thrilled to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, I'm Sam Stroman. I'm also very glad to be here. It kind of would be disappointing if I wasn't, right? But I've been at Awardco for 5 years now. Really excited to talk about the different nature of changing, or the changing nature of rewards and recognition and leadership and engagement.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you both for being here. We really appreciate it. As we're speaking here, please feel free to hop into the chat and tell us where you're viewing from, where you're located right now. It's always kind of fun to see where people are, because we're located in Utah right now, and we know many of you are around the globe and around the nation, so we'd like to see where you're calling in from or where you're watching from. So as we begin, what makes a great leader? We have a poll here for you that we want to present to you. So what do you think is most important in leadership? We're going to give you a few minutes to kind of go over this, but as you do and as you answer this question, I'd like to pose it to both of you. What do you think makes a good leader? Nichelle?
Yeah, I think when it comes to leadership, it's really important to just recognize you have to know your team. You have to recognize who's there, what are their talents, what are their strengths, but most importantly, why do you have them on your team? Even if you inherited the team, you still have to get to know them. So I think that's like the biggest principle is you have to just be willing to put yourself out there and just get to know your team.
Yeah, be vulnerable. That's a hard part of leadership, right? Yeah, of the many hard parts. Yeah. Sam, what do you think?
When I think of a good leader, the word that comes to mind for me is balance. The best leaders that I've had, and by the way, I'm still learning to be a good leader, so hopefully I'll get there at some point. But balance, the best leaders I've had have often given me the opportunity to excel, but also given me accountability to make sure that I'm actually returning back to them. Yeah. And they give me support, but also empathy if things don't turn out exactly the way I had expected them to be. So balance in all things, and I think that comes with experience as being a leader, is when you're supposed to be giving them the opportunity, when you're supposed to be giving them accountability. And walking that line is tough.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the many tough things about being a leader is just everything you have to do, right? You have to find that balance. You have to lead with empathy. But let's see what everybody else said. So what do you think is most important in leadership? Here's some of the results. The results here because all of us can't see this, but empathy gives good feedback, strategic vision, flexibility, and hard work. So almost 50% of you said that the most important thing in leadership was empathy. That's pretty impressive. And interestingly, the least important one was hard work. Any comments on that? Sam, what do you think?
I think hard work is something you kind of expect, right? And often you get it from the people who are actually feeling like they're understood. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but I don't have to be told to work hard when I'm engaged with the task at hand. Mm-hmm. And so yes, that's kind of the thing that can fluctuate up and down, but it's usually a symptom of other things, right?
Yeah.
If they're being shown empathy. I love that, because I think that's a hallmark of the workplace today is people want empathy. They don't want to just be told what to do and how hard to do it.
Yeah, that's very true. And we're talking about leadership mostly because we want to see how you can get better leadership buy-in for all of your HR initiatives. So all of you on this call are leaders in your own right. You lead teams, you lead people, you lead organizations. And we want to talk about how you can go to the other leaders in your organization and get that buy-in for your initiatives. Sometimes, as we've been talking to people in the industry, that's been a little difficult. And so we want to talk about that and wrap it into leadership and engagement, and that's why we talk about leadership right here in the beginning. So thank you for chiming in on the chat. We see a lot of you are watching from Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Michigan, Oklahoma, Georgia. That's a lot of fun. Thank you for doing that. We appreciate all of your comments, and please, as we're talking, just another reminder to keep talking and give us questions. Ask our presenters questions about leadership and about all these other things. So, as we were speaking about, leaders have a difficult job. Resignations are still at an all-time high. The Great Resignation that we talked about a year ago or more, that's still ongoing, although maybe not quite at the same level. But 4 million per month in 2023, that is way over anything before pre-pandemic levels. And then economic stress is still impacting employees. So you have inflation, you have burnout, you have productivity issues. That is all just kind of this big soup that leaders are dealing with. And Nichelle, as you've been an HR business partner here in Awardco, what have you seen in Awardco as far as these stressors, either internally with all of our teams?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like a big part that sometimes happens is burnout. I think it's really easy that you're just going. You have this huge expectation that's been placed on you that the burnout can really be real. Yeah. And I feel like oftentimes we hear from employees of just like, oh, like I just have a lot on my plate right now. I'm not sure what to do. I don't know how to talk to my leader. And so that's something I feel like we face a lot in people ops is how to help people navigate towards that.
Yeah, it goes back to that empathy, right? You gotta have empathy for people. Sam, would you add anything to that?
What comes to mind most often for me when we're talking about macroeconomic things, and that seems to be the thing that is surfacing most when we talk to our employees and what they hear from a lot of leaders is the macroeconomic situation is either good or not good depending on who you're talking to, but it's definitely uncertain. So where my mind goes is you've got this macroeconomic outlook that is impacting layoffs and retention, and then you've got micro situations, which are interpersonal, right? Yeah. They're between managers and employees. They're between the company and the individual. And these are micro transactions. And how do you manage the macro with the micro? And I think that resonates with me, and that's kind of at the heart of recognition, rewards, and how we can touch each individual person.
Yeah.
In what we can control. Outside of the walls, you can't control.
Yeah. Would you also say that that's part of leadership's job is to manage those forces from outside and how they impact a person individually, and how do leaders do a better job of that?
Well, yeah, I guess to answer that in one way, I don't think anybody's ever said, I think I'm going to look elsewhere for a job because of the larger economic outlook, right?
That's true.
They can be worrying and they can be concerning, but they look elsewhere or they find greener pastures because of those micro transactions. Maybe they're not feeling heard, maybe they're not being seen, maybe they're not being valued. Mm-hmm. So that is at the heart of a people leader's job, right? Is to make sure that those people are really getting connection.
Yeah.
Because again, you can't control what's outside of the walls of your company.
100%. And as we talk about empathy for everybody that you lead, maybe empathy for yourself is important as well as a leader, because you can't control everything. There's no way you can. And you have to be able to manage that internally as well. So different leaders have different priorities, and that's okay. As we talk about leadership, we're trying to set the stage for how you can talk to other leaders in your organization and get that buy-in for total rewards and all these initiatives that can really benefit your employees. But different leaders have different priorities, but one thing unites them all, and that's a desire to do great work. Sam, you and I talked about this a little bit earlier, but nobody really wants to do a bad job, right? Everybody is in it to do good. I wonder if you would comment on that a little bit.
And I'd be interested in your opinion here, because we work with people all day, every day, and more people than I myself or others. But do we really feel that in our bones? Do you really feel that people want to succeed? Mm-hmm. People want to excel. I feel that that's true. If you say, hey, I'm going to set you up for success or I'm going to set you up for failure, what do you want?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's going to say, of course I want to succeed. And so, the question as to why some people succeed and why others don't usually isn't a matter of intent or what they want. It's usually a matter of, are they being supported? Are they being given the opportunity? Do they have the resources to succeed? Those are more important conversations for me, especially if we can just align on the foundation. Everybody does want to succeed. 99.9% of people out there are good and want to do well, right?
Yeah.
Have you found that to be the case, Nichelle? Or have you met some bad eggs that are like, yeah, I'm here to take the company down?
No, I think that it's such an important thing, especially as you're getting into leadership, is that you have to recognize that you're going to be working with people. Mm-hmm. And if you don't feel like you have the people skills, you can learn it, but it's going to take some time. Yeah. But also, too, it kind of comes naturally for people who do have that leadership ability. But I think the most important part that I've learned from leaders that I've had in my life is just this aspect of that they weren't nervous or scared to come talk to me. about, hey, this is what I need to see you improve on. And I think feedback is probably the number one thing that I hear from employees is how important it is to receive specific feedback from their manager.
Yeah, and you've been, even before you came to Awardco, you were a leader of a lot of people. And did you see the same thing in those organizations as well?
Yeah, when I managed a department of 50 people, and it was a big task to kind of get to know people, and kind of going back to my first comment.
Yeah.
But it was really amazing just to see when you individually come together with an opportunity to just recognize your sole purpose of being there. It kind of transforms how you think about your leadership style. It wasn't, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. I needed to include others' thoughts onto our plans and our goals.
Yeah, thank you for that. So as we move on, I want to pose a question to everyone watching this. What are your priorities? And this can be rhetorical. You don't necessarily have to answer in the Q&A or in the chat, but please pipe in as to what your priorities as a leader are. It could be something like, my priorities are to increase ROI. My priorities are this, my priorities are that. Nothing is wrong. We just want to hear what you're dealing with so that we can talk about it as a whole and talk about priorities. So pipe in and let us know what your priorities are so we can talk about that a little bit more. We've often found that there is a leadership and a priority disconnect as well. Leaders may have a different idea of what work is like for their employees. So 53% of employees want better compensation, but only 26% of executives think employees want better compensation. These stats are from SHRM, and this is from a study that was done in 2021. But as you look at these, it's an interesting point. 53% of employees want better compensation. I think if you asked every employee, they'd probably be like, yeah, I totally want better
It's like my
compensation.
number one.
Yeah. And 26% of executives think they do. I think that there's not only a disconnect between what leadership thinks priorities are and what their employees are experiencing, but also maybe even between this stat. Sam, we talked about this as well, as far as of course people are going to want more. I mean, Nichelle, if somebody came to you and said, would you like more money? And you're like, yeah, you're going to say yes.
I'd be like, yep, sign me up.
Yeah. And we spoke about this a little bit early too.
Yeah, I think we talked about Skittles, right?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Your treat of choice is Skittles. What's your treat of choice?
Probably Reese's Pieces.
Reese's Pieces.
Yeah.
So I say, mine's Dots Pretzels.
Okay.
I love those things. They're like crack to me.
Yeah.
But Nichelle, hey, I'm going to give you a bag of your favorite Reese's Pieces or Reese's Cups?
Reese's Pieces.
Okay, Reese's Pieces. I'm going to give you 1 bag of Reese's Pieces or 2 bags of Reese's Pieces. What would you like?
2.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Do you want to think about that?
Yeah, no, I want it.
Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a no-brainer. If you're not paying for it and you're like, yeah, of course, if there's no strings attached, I want 2 bags. And that's the same way with me and Dots Pretzels. Like, if you're going to give me something that's good, I want more of that same thing. And the disconnect that Bronson and I were talking about in relation to this, leadership disconnect is, I think that a lot of leaders take some survey respondents and responses as gospel when, well, our people just want to be paid more. That's what they say when they are asked. Well, yeah, that's because I'm going to be doing the job anyway. So if you want to give me more for it, please do.
Sure.
Right? That's a no-brainer. But I think that this question and these results of these surveys are often used as a crutch to just say we just need to pay better. But as we'll talk about later, pay is an expectation, and it's not necessarily seen as a reward.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, but we'll get to that. That's where I think the disconnect is. Everything's about pay.
Yeah, and it isn't, right? Like, it doesn't have to be. We got a few comments here as well. Greg Walker said that his priority is employees who are safe and healthy and engaged with their work, their department, and the organization. That kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, like that when you led your team, Nichelle, like you want to make sure that they're supported, that they have everything they need. But like, support can mean many different things. Not only support as a leader, but it can mean making sure they're paid well, making sure that they feel valued for what they're contributing. We also have Sonia Miller said that my chat isn't working, so she's putting it here. My priority is not to only deliver to the business, so ROI, but also to develop my team, give them opportunities to showcase their capabilities, and ensure everyone feels respected at work. That's really interesting. How can we engender more respect at work? Because I feel like that is a benefit of work, because work is ennobling, right? You work and you get value out of it, but how can we engender more respect through either leadership or engagement or total rewards or something like that? Michelle, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a really great topic to establish, especially when you're working in a larger organization, because when you hear that word respect, either sometimes people shut down and they're like, oh, like we do that already. And then others will just simply say like, no, like what, let's do it. I think when you define respect, I think it's really important to recognize that you have to understand people's backgrounds. People are coming from different experiences. They're coming from, different jobs of employment, and this hasn't been their only job. So what can you learn? I really like, what was her name?
Sonia?
Sonia. I really like Sonia's comment because it just kind of highlights this importance of really just like showcasing people's talents and engaging them in the conversation. So I think a matter of respect is asking those questions of, hey, what's your perspective or what's your thoughts, and not shutting it down if it's not something that aligns with yours, but be inquisitive, ask questions, find out, what matters most to them.
Yeah, and that's incumbent on you as a leader to do that, because leaders are really busy, so they may not have that opportunity all the time, but there are ways to do it. Sam, you're a really busy leader here at Awardco. Like, how do you, in your work, engender respect for your employees?
One thing that I've been trying to work on is just evaluating how I treat each individual employee and trying to look at my own personal biases, because we all have them. How am I treating each individual employee, and are there ways that I'm giving certain individuals opportunities and others not? Or am I treating different individuals differently based upon either their background or their position, and not realizing that a healthy amount of respect is linked to what we've just been talking about, opportunity and accountability. So when I ask a person in a certain role to do something, I will treat them the same way as someone else when I've asked them, and follow up with them in the same way. Because I think that so often that respect isn't necessarily somebody going around the office who's looking to offend people. It's those kind of under the surface interactions where you're like, I just don't know if I feel respected, or if they respect my expertise in this area. So constantly evaluating those thoughts, and am I really treating people with the same equality of opportunity?
What would you both say to a leader who maybe doesn't have the same sense of awareness that both of you have? So a leader that maybe doesn't think about respect, not that they want to be disrespectful by any means, but maybe is too busy, or that it just isn't top of mind for them, because that can be a really difficult conversation. Like, you need to respect people more. What would you say, Michelle?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is be open to, if your HR team or if your company does 360 reviews, prep your team. Genuinely ask them, hey, when we have this 360 review, I really want to understand, maybe give them 3 points. I really want to understand, how do you feel like I give, positive feedback or just direct feedback? How do you feel like our interactions are? How do you feel like your workload is, and what do I need to understand about that? You could give your team some specific guidelines and feedback of maybe what you're expecting to hear. I think a 360 review is a really good way to kind of have a leader just have the work be put out there, and then be able to receive some feedback.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Sam, what do you think? Kind of a hard thing.
Yeah. I don't know if I can add more than already has been said, but yeah, just being aware. I think that you hit the nail on the head. And everything that I'm saying right now, I'm thinking to myself, I need to hear this, right? I need to be more aware. I need to be more assertive when there are some issues that might arise. Be more direct. These are general statements, but I do think that everybody can improve on those things.
And everybody can improve that little bit of a disconnect, because a function of leadership is that you're not involved in everybody's day-to-day. And that can form a little bit of a disconnect. You may not understand their workload or what they're doing or what their daily life is like. And that's not to say you have to be micromanaging, involved in every little thing, but 360 reviews, there's some touch points that you can do. So we've talked about this leadership and priority disconnect, how leaders may have a different idea of what work is like. But what is work like? Work differs in so many different ways depending on the person. So work is transactional by nature. And I think I would love to hear both of your thoughts on this. When we talk about something being transactional, it's often seen as a negative thing, right? And it's like, oh, that's a transactional comment, or whatever it might be. Do you think that work being transactional is a negative? And we'll talk about work being transactional. I mean, as you can see here, it's becoming more transactional. What we mean by transactional work is that an employee gives something and gets something in return. And also the employer give something and get something in return. So, you are exchanging something. Where work is becoming more transactional just because average tenure for millennials is 2.8 years. That's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But back to the original question, is transactional work bad?
Honestly, I think it comes back to just the perspective of it. I know that when I came over here to Awardco a year and a half ago, I saw that the company lived and breathed what the values were. I genuinely saw that Awardco was all about recognizing the good and valuing, what people bring to each other. And I think that that's so important. If you have a company that has just what you're living and breathing in your culture, then this transactional work just becomes different. Because when I think of transactional here in my place of work, I think, oh, well, if I'm gonna, receive a recognition, I need to give a recognition. Or if I'm going to go use our golf passes for, one of our perks, then, can I include somebody else, from my area around me and not just, my friends or family. And so I think that it just depends on if your employees have that buy-in of, they're really believing in what, the company culture is all about.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you. And what do you think?
When I hear work is transactional, I think that people struggle with this, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, it can be seen as a negative.
Yeah.
And I think there are two sides to the workplace that we're trying to work through, especially as the millennials entered the workplace, and then even later generations. Like, we are expecting more, right? And with those expectations comes this really fuzzy area of like, okay, work can be transactional, or work can be everything. And there's no in between, right? Your workplace should fulfill you. It should satisfy your every want or your every need. It should give you purpose. It should, obviously provide for you. It should give you opportunities for growth. It should, all of these things, as our expectations rise, it's like, well, that's great, but then work becomes your everything, and you think, oh my gosh. And when it's your everything, you give it your everything, and then that's when burnout happens, especially if a workplace can't fulfill all those things, which a workplace cannot, and it's not meant to be. On the other side, you've got, hey, work is transactional. I clock in at 8, I leave at 5, I do my work, I get stuff done, end of story. I have work-life balance, which is fantastic, and we all want that. But then, organizations sometimes are wondering, why are people not going above and beyond? Why aren't we seeing them really put forth effort and do more?
Yeah.
Well, you can't have it both ways, Either you're going to burn people out at 60 to 80 hours a week because work is everything, and that's what really fulfills them, or they have a life.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. They have families, they have friends, they have service opportunities, they have fulfillment outside of work, and we want that.
Yeah.
So I think that the workplace is struggling with that, and that has to do with what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Total rewards is that, how does that fit?
Yeah.
To be in the middle. It doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Yeah, and total rewards can be a huge piece to how you can make that that transition between what your employer wants and what you can give a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more, easy in a way. I think that's really important, an important piece that may often be overlooked.
Yeah.
Because we talk about different things like pay and compensation and total rewards. What do you think here on the webinar? Are total rewards a part of your overall strategy? Let us know in the chat so we can talk about that. But work is transactional, and total rewards can ease that transition and that transaction a little bit, right? So work has always been transactional. You think about, that's the definition of work in essence, right? You're getting paid for doing something. And that's not bad, like you said, Sam. Like, transactional doesn't necessarily need to be bad. But what has changed? Sam and Michelle, you both touched on that. People are staying for shorter amounts of time. And sometimes that can create feelings of distrust, right? Like, an employer's like, oh my goodness, you've been here for 6 months or a year, and now you want to leave? Like, this is creating feelings of distrust for all hires that come on, because people are just rotating through so quickly. It can create that feeling. Also for employees, right? Because they may be a little bit dissatisfied. They may not see what they really need. They may not be getting that value. They may decide to leave, or they may stay but not give the amount of productivity that would be required of that position. So the economy has shifted. Things have changed. We've talked about this as we've been giving webinars for a really long time. Like the pandemic and then the Great Resignation, things just keep changing. And it causes a change in priorities and goals just for everybody. And things aren't going to stop changing, right? So what can we do now to make sure that we have this really good relationship between employees and employers? What do you think, Michelle?
Yeah, I think just taking like a big check of what do you currently have available. Don't think about trying to add in things. What do you currently have available to your employees? Do they know about it? For an example, I didn't know that, there were some benefits in our health insurance that I was totally missing out on.
Sure, yeah.
Like chiropractic work. I didn't know that I could take advantage of that.
I could use that.
Yeah. And so it's just those little reminders that I think that you can send out to your employees just to say, hey, were you aware that we have a chiropractic benefit? We want to encourage our employees to take care of their health or mental health needs. You can, have X amount of visits for, therapy. I think that's such an important reminder of all companies have these big benefit packages, but do employees really know like what's a part of the rewards that are there?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I had experienced the same thing. Didn't know we had chiropractic. Yeah. I was like, oh my goodness,
it's amazing.
Amazing. That's awesome. And there's many things you can do as an employer or as a leader. You don't have to do something new. You can just shift around what you have.
When you were talking about this slide, the professional development came into mind for me because often it's hard for us to see how does the changing workforce or the time that they spend with us, how does that affect our decision making on a day-to-day basis? And I get it from a leader perspective. It's like, hey, we can put X amount of budget into professional development for our people. But if we're just going to end up training someone else's employee because they're going to leave after they get trained or after they get developed, that's a hard sell. And so really what it means to me is like, obviously retention's a big point, but like if you can invest in your people in ways that impact them day to day and makes them not want to go elsewhere, then it makes the conversation a lot easier for the professional development side of things or other perks where it's like, yes, we are willing to invest in this person and we're willing to invest at this amount because our average tenure is longer.
Yeah.
We know we're going to both help them develop, but also we're going to get some return from them while they're here.
Yeah, I love that point. That kind of leads into, Lisa chimed in here and said, yes, absolutely, total rewards, pay, benefits, intangibles, group activities, etc. It's all part of the equation, but you're right, pay is still key. There is a lot of education throughout the year to remind employees that benefits covered by the employer should be added onto their pay, a total comp statement and reminders, etc. This is a really interesting viewpoint in that a lot of education throughout the year to remind employees that benefits covered by their employer should be added onto their pay, seen as part of that total reward, because maybe there's a disconnect. Maybe it's not seen as like, oh yeah, my employer's actually doing that for me. That's really nice. But for example, Awardco has this thing where it's like a lifestyle spending account. We call it A-Pay, where every month, every employee gets some points to spend on the platform. And it's been going for about, I don't know, a year and a half, something like that. And interestingly, I've become used to it.
Yeah.
And I forget about it. Not that it's there, but I forget of what an awesome benefit that is because I'm reminded monthly, but now it's like, oh yeah, maybe the
Cool, I got the cool graphic in my email.
Yeah.
It's not a number on the paycheck.
Yeah.
But like, how important is that to really show employees that there's a lot of things at their disposal? Is that just a matter of education? Lisa says that it just requires more education.
Yeah.
What do you both think?
Well, I do think that she brings up a really good point in that when people are looking and they want to see what's out on the market, there's two numbers they usually compare highest, which is what am I paid here and what am I going to be paid there? Yeah. She brings up a really good point that if we can educate our people to not just take that and take the whole package and equate A to A, compare apples to apples, then those benefits and those perks and those other things that you're investing in your people come to the surface. And that's a tough one. I know we need to do a better job because we didn't know we had chiropractic.
Yeah. I'm like, take notes for our people ops team.
Yeah. What about those slightly intangible benefits that may not be able to be listed on a pay statement? Something like that. Intangible benefits in terms of, we have a great PTO or something like that. That can be listed. I understand that,
Sure.
But is there another form of benefit that you would have a harder time communicating that education?
Yeah, I think it from what it sounds like, you could just talk about it when you're hiring somebody, when you're doing an interview process, that you can simply just express, hey, we have this unlimited PTO, but this is what this means. This is what this means to us as a culture. It isn't just like, oh, hey, like I can take 5 days off every single week, but we have this benefit for this reason. And so maybe just providing some explanation when people are coming in, or even on your company website when people are trying to research what you're about, define what that means, what that benefit includes.
Transparency.
Yeah,
right?
transparency.
Yeah, I really like that, because with total rewards, sometimes it can be like, well, I don't want to tell them everything.
Yeah.
I get that for compensation.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
you don't want to be completely open with that all the time.
I want to get to work on a product. You guys are, I don't remember what her name was.
Lisa.
Lisa.
Yeah.
Great idea. This needs to happen. We need to have a payroll service that can equate all of the built-in benefits that you have in your payroll.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why, at some point, the workplace decided that salary was the only thing that needed to be visible. I don't even know how much Awardco spends on healthcare for me and my family. You know, I can probably do the math and dig in with the help of my people ops people.
Yeah.
Why isn't that not just front and center, right?
Yeah.
Like, here's your paid time off, here's maybe subsidized daycare, here's pet insurance, here's all these things that we're offering you, and here's your true salary.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
And I think it would give
interesting.
people a fuller picture of what they're getting.
Yeah, a more robust picture of total rewards as well, right? Because they're like, oh wow, I'm getting all of these amazing benefits. That's
You know as well as anyone that most of that's hidden. Like, you know, if a salary is, you know, $50K, that's not what the company's paying.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is just understanding that transparency, but most importantly, just letting employees know what they can grasp, what they can value from their time with that company.
Yeah, we have another comment here that total comp statements do exist based on your vendors, which is true. You're absolutely right. This is from Carly. You're absolutely right. They do exist, and but I think what we may be getting at is that not all of the benefits are listed. And I don't know. What do you think, Michelle? Do you think, with Carly's statement here, that they do exist, but they're based on vendors?
We need to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely need to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, great. And Lisa also chimed back in and said that she built one at a past job. ADP, Insperity, they have canned total comp statements that can be tailored to a client's needs. But maybe there's something more there that we can look at.
We need to broadcast the good word. I've been in the workplace for 30 years, and I have never gotten a statement
I can
like
see
that.
the light bulb coming
Yeah,
on right
there's
now.
the light bulb.
I want this now.
Yeah. So the whole idea behind this is that we need to perhaps reframe how we think of transactional work. It's not a bad thing. It's okay. In fact, you can build an employee, give them all the resources they need, and they may still decide that somewhere else is better for them. But that's okay, because then you can help them transition to another area and build them up, continue to build them up, which will only serve to build you up in the future. So now we want to kind of shift a little bit to talk about total rewards and tie it back into what we've been talking about with buy-in and with leadership and transactional work, and talk about total rewards as a whole package. So this is a definition. I won't read the whole thing, but it's from Gartner. And total rewards, combination of benefits, compensation, etc. I'm interested, though, we do have a poll here. How do you think of total rewards in your organization? So I'm going to pop this up here. Does your organization have a total rewards strategy? First of all, let's just set the baseline. Yes, no, sort of, yes, but it's not very comprehensive. And we'll give you a few minutes to answer that, and then we'll go to the results. And when you think of total rewards, Michelle and Sam, what is part of that?
I think a big part, we've talked a lot about compensation, we've talked a lot about health benefits, but even just I think employee experience, I think is a big part of it. It's more than just the pizza parties, it's more than just, hey, here's donuts on Fridays, but I think it's how are you helping each team engage with one another, I think is also a part of that total rewards, is just overall company culture and health.
Yeah.
I think of the word that gets lost in there, which is reward.
Reward.
And we're going to talk about this,
Yep.
but the other day I was thinking about how most organizations think about total rewards, and an analogy came to mind. Maybe this fits, maybe it doesn't, but we're all familiar, hopefully, with the Old West and the bandits that would come into town and steal people's cattle or rob the saloon, right? And you're a saloon owner, and you're like, man, I'm really tired of getting robbed. I'm working hard for this money. What am I going to do here? And the town sheriff, what does he do when the outlaw comes into town and keeps robbing people? Puts up
a wanted poster.
Puts up a wanted poster.
Yeah.
He's, Billy the Kid is wanted, And what do? They offer a
Reward,
right? I think so often companies think of rewards as, well, this is what we give you for your time, right? Comp, right? Benefits. How weird would it be if you're in the Old West and it says, Billy the Kid, wanted for cattle rustling, whatever, reward, the joy and satisfaction that you won't be robbed anymore. Like, well, thanks.
No incentive.
Yeah, I'm not going to put my life on the line just to get what I would have gotten anyways, which is if he's in jail, I won't be robbed.
Yeah.
I need something above and beyond. And I think that that has gotten lost. Every benefit, every perk that has been offered over the course of the last 100 or 200 years, or the benefit, was a reward or a perk at one point.
Yeah.
I was looking it up, and health insurance, do you guys know when that started being offered?
No.
Earliest I could find was 1877.
Really?
Oh, wow.
1877. It's
earlier than I
some
thought.
granite workers in England were like, we're getting, we're
dying.
getting injured on the job. We need health insurance to help us. So they did that. Some other options or some other things. Time off, right? That was a perk. That was something that attracted people to jobs. Then paid time off came. That was the 1940s, by the way.
PTO was 1940s.
Yeah,
Wow.
in the 1930s, it was hardly ever even spoken of. But like a study came out in 1943, I was looking at, that said 8 million people had gotten some form of paid time off.
Interesting.
Great, that was attraction.
can't
Now
wait
it's a
to-
standard.
Yeah, I can't believe it took till the 1940s for
Yeah,
that
yeah.
to happen.
No
That's
wonder
crazy.
Ebenezer Scrooge was so bugged when Bob Cratchit wanted the day off with full pay. You know, it wasn't
Right,
standard.
It wasn't standard. So every perk that we offer becomes a standard. And we talk a lot about the standard of living increasing, standard of working. Standard of working is increasing. Like,
Yeah.
what are we going to do to catch up or to keep up? So anyway, just some thoughts.
Well, that's really interesting. We're definitely going to touch on that, like you said, Sam. I want to get to these results here. Does your organization have a total reward strategy? 100% of respondents said yes.
Love it.
Great, you're doing awesome. That's really, really great. I mean, now that I think about it, that question may have been poorly worded because I don't know if I would say no if I didn't have one, like, oh yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, and most organizations do. It's great, and that is just something that we want to say, cool, you have one. Is there something more that you can do? Is there not more in terms of you need to add, but like you said earlier, Nichelle, is there something you can reframe and kind of restructure a little bit and reallocate to that total reward structure? So as we move on here, salary and benefits are expected, not rewards. Sam, you touched on this earlier, we understand this is perhaps not the most conventional thing that we could be saying here about total rewards, but we want to try and help you reframe how you think about total rewards. Are they just compensation and benefits? Are they more? It's a really interesting discussion we want to dive into a little bit more. But how can total rewards, and when we talk about that, it's not just compensation and benefits. How can they improve employee engagement? Obviously, when you get paid, you're going to feel good about that. You're going to be engaged to do your job. But is that enough to engage employees? What do you think?
I think when it comes to employee engagement, I think you have to really understand who are your employees. If you have millennials, getting a coffee mug at like your 2-year celebration probably isn't going to be our go-to favorite thing. But if it's like a food experience or something like that, great. Like let's go to this amazing restaurant as a team. I think you just really have to know like who your audience is to really understand how to engage them and what's really being supportive there. If you have individuals who have been in the workforce for 40 plus years, they might just want to just have like a nice relaxation opportunity, out on the golf course or just at home or something, or out in the woods. And I think you just have to know where your audience is coming from.
Yeah, it reminds me of a story from one of Awardco's clients. They had a 20-year service anniversary program where they would reward on the standard 1, 5, 10, 15. And on their 20-year, they would give a custom watch. And it was an experience where you could go and have it designed, and it was really nice. And the administrator of that program, I was speaking with her, and she said, we saw one of those watches on eBay. And the person obviously didn't want it.
Yeah.
Like, wow, interesting. Maybe we need to rethink of how we're doing that, Maybe it doesn't engage our employees as much as we think it does. So how do you get that information, Sam? What do you think of how can you determine what will engage your employees, and how can you use total rewards to
I think it does come back to expectations, what you were just talking about. And this is me pulling from real life. As you can tell, I like analogies, and I like to pull it down out of business speak and employee engagement in robotic terms. But I think about relationships that I have and relationship with my wife, or the interpersonal relationships that you have, you want those to be engaged as well. And that is based upon investment and expectations from the individual. If my wife expects me to do the dishes at the end, when I get home from work and I do the dishes, I don't walk around strutting and
Look at me, I
look
did
at
it.
look at I did the dishes, haha, look at me. It's like, well, yeah, that was an expectation, and she shouldn't have to shower me with praise because I did something I've agreed to.
Sure.
But if she's not asking for that, and I can go above and beyond, and maybe she was doing that, maybe that was a chore that she had and I did it for her, then she feels that investment. She knows I'm invested in her and she's invested in me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's the same, and I know, people get tired of, analogies that equate the workplace to, personal relationships. They're not the same.
Yeah.
We're not family, we're a team, right? But I think that the same principles apply. And driving the point home, if you're just wanting people to do what they're supposed to do, and you give them what they expect, they will do what you expect. But they're not going to go above and beyond, and they're not going to be even more invested unless they feel that extra investment from your side.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the narrowing of the gap. The closer you get to them, the closer they are to you, and then you can,
Yeah.
bridge that.
That brings up something. We're getting some more chats coming in. So Erica said that the value in a comp statement, kind of going back to that what we were talking about earlier, is subjective to the viewer. If the viewer is not using the benefits or doesn't value those benefits, then they won't carry the same weight as pay. 100%, yeah. And then Angela, you also said, you're right, Erica, and if members of your workforce are struggling to make ends meet, benefits may actually become a pain point. Interestingly.
Very interesting.
Yeah, because part of what the company sees as their total package of total rewards isn't usable day to day by the people who need it to pay their bills or need it to buy diapers. And choice. That's what comes up in my head is like, well, yeah, one size fits all doesn't work. You've got to be able to give people the choice of some benefits and how they're going to use those total rewards dollars.
Yeah, that's a really interesting tie-in, because talking about choice and then talking about that story I just shared about the employee obviously didn't want that watch, and just being able to choose like what you value is a really powerful way to convey your total rewards. Not always can total rewards be totally selective though, right? Like you don't have that choice a lot of the time, but there are ways you can give that choice.
Yeah.
A lot of interesting ways. Yeah.
I was just going to say, tying back to what we're talking about, all of this needs to be discussed and learned and understood from up top. How do we get leader buy-in? It's a change in philosophy, it's a change of thinking. And oftentimes the leaders in our organizations have been in the workplace the longest.
Yeah.
And so they may have come into leadership positions in the O's or in the 90s or in the 80s, right? When times were different. We have to have that mental shift. So whereas we haven't said to this point, this is what you need to do with your leaders to get buy-in, this conversation is the type of conversation that needs to be had at higher levels so they understand this is the way the workplace is now. It's not the way it used to be. And anyway, we'll get to some of those more concrete examples.
Yeah, because I think everyone on this webinar, you understand that you need to have that conversation with leaders, whether that's yourself or with people you work with, anything like that. But we want to empower you with some ideas of what you can do to have those conversations, what you can take to those conversations to be able to show the value of total rewards and show what can be done with them. So, employee engagement does a lot of things. We've touched on this at length, so we're going to kind of go quickly over that. But increased satisfaction in and outside of work is a benefit of employee engagement. Feelings of value, improved relationships, better mental health, all good things that I think everybody here would say, yep, we would like that. We would like more of that, definitely. The ROI of total rewards, we're going to kind of use this to get into what can you talk about with your leaders to understand that more, like how can you get that buy-in from them. So here's just a few stats. This is from Gallup and Deloitte about how the total rewards can help lower turnover, they can increase engagement, they can raise productivity, et cetera, et cetera. These are all things that I think any leader would want, especially when times are a little bit uncertain, when they're dealing with a lot. These are things that you can take to them, say, this is a tangible benefit right here. And it's not a study by anyone, it's done by, Deloitte, Gartner, SHRM, all these really reputable areas. So there's another survey that we did with HR.com that said 50% of survey respondents said that they've encountered difficulty in getting leadership buy-in with total rewards. So that brings up our next poll question. how do you get buy-in for your total reward strategy? So you will see that poll on your screen right now. Tell us how you get buy-in up to this point. What has worked for you? And as you're answering this survey, type it into the Q&A and into the chat so other people can learn from you as well, can learn from the struggles you may have had or the successes. But as we're waiting for you to talk about that, it's difficult to get buy-in. Mm-hmm. Why is it so difficult?
I think sometimes as leaders, especially as in HR, when we get just bombarded with, emails of like, hey, let's improve your performance management, let's improve your rewards, let's do this.
Sure.
You gravitate towards the messages that maybe are the most pain points to you. But I think sometimes, and what I've learned in HR is you have to recognize the whole total strategy of the company. I had a conversation with our CFO the other day, and that was something that he stressed a lot on, was just you have to understand what the company strategy is and what our goals are right now. Yeah. So if you're focused on, hey, we have to, help improve our sales, we have to improve our revenue, then, maybe the programs that we're trying to implement, maybe that won't fit in right now. But maybe it will help, our sales force or whatever it may be. So I think that was an eye-opening thing for me to understand, is you have to understand the company goals and strategies. And if you don't know that, don't hesitate to ask your leaders of, what does this mean? Over the next 6 months, what are you as an executive team really focus on, and how, as people ops or HR, how can we support that?
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially because a lot of people don't have that insight. Employees may not have that insight, especially with a huge company, thousands of employees. You may not be able to go and talk to, but to that point, it is incumbent on the leaders to say, here's our strategy, here's what we're trying to do. And that can help ease that buy-in, and can help ease it a little bit. I really like that. Sam, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think not even the elephant in the room, I think what everybody on this webinar understands is that things have changed in the last 6 to 9 months. We maybe don't have as much autonomy in buying decisions that we used to have. As the economy gets a little rougher, as inflation continues to grow, every dollar is being scrutinized. Yeah. And what might have been an easier persuasion effort on our part is, hey, I've got the budget and it's in my budget and I think we need this, has become, do we really need this? And let's have a conversation. And so there's 4 things that I have thought of that span any tool, right? And usually CFOs and COOs, this will make their eyes light up, which is 1, reduce spend. Yeah. Is what you're going to implement reduce spend by saying, hey, this budget's going to go to this budget and it's going to be lower. Great. 2, increase revenue. Hey, this actual tool or thing is going to increase revenue in this way. And the more direct line, the better, right? 3, improve efficiency, right? This is going to make us better at X. So therefore, when we're reducing spend and increasing revenue, we're going to get better at it over time. Yeah. That's an awesome thing. That's a 3rd. And then on the 4th side, it's improved experience, right? Are we going to improve the experience of our employees, or are we going to improve the experience of our customers? If you can hit all 4, it's like, why are we not doing this?
No-brainer.
Why are we not doing this? Because everything that I maybe have had a concern about as a CFO or a COO have been addressed. Yeah. Now, can you get all 4? That's tough.
That is tough.
But if you can make that argument, it becomes a lot easier to sell.
Yeah, that's true. Let's look at how all of you are getting buy-in for your total reward strategy. This looks like a pretty even split. Yeah, it's almost 25% on each one almost. So a lot of you are the decision maker. Some of you have someone else pitch it to your leaders. Some of you get the data you have, but it's kind of difficult to prove that ROI sometimes, for sure. And the other, this is a really even split. I do what I can, but my leaders have different priorities. Interesting. I really didn't expect it to go this way, but that just shows the distribution of how many different kinds of organizations and leadership and everything that everyone's dealing with, all of you on this call today. But getting back to what you said, Sam, about how you can prove that and get those 4 points, you need to speak the language of leaders. You can get what data you can, but to many of your points, it's difficult to get that ROI. How can you get the ROI if it's difficult? Like, what are some ways that you can take some of that ROI about total rewards or engagement and make that impactful?
I think specifically, it's just maybe doing a little bit of research of, what is this product actually about? What is it promising to do? And maybe helping the organization understand how does it incorporate into like our own strategy in general.
Yeah.
I think that's one way that I think that I would go about it, is just really just defining like what is this product actually about and what's the impact that could potentially be there.
Yeah, a little bit of research.
Yeah.
I like that. Sam, what do you
It's
think?
not easy.
Yeah, for sure.
All the CSMs and icons here that talk about ROI of specific programs, they're always asking for more data. And usually it's, hey, maybe 3 or 6 or 9 months down the road, hey, do we have data before? Oh, no, we don't. And you can't go back in time. So you've got to be thinking a little bit proactively. And if you're thinking about 2024 right now and how you might want to validate a specific tool or a program, well, we're only in, we're not in August yet, we're in July. We're only in July. We've got 6 months ahead of us that should you make the case for a specific tool, rewards and recognition, etc., get the data now. Or at least start tracking the data. That's the tough, like just track it. And you can look at it later, but make sure it's there so that when you want to make the case, you'll have a control. You can say, hey, we are going after this and we're going to increase engagement by X%, and here are the metrics that we want to get.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to go backwards, you can't.
Yeah. And to your point, Nichelle, and both of your points kind of mesh to this, is that if you can start somewhere, get any data point you can, then that's better than nothing. And then you can build on that and you can iterate on that. And so like that's just one point of how you can speak the language of leaders. You can come with solutions, not with problems. You can answer the question, how are we going to pay for this? We've talked about this a little bit in that it doesn't necessarily have to be new, like your new budget. You can take something that isn't quite working and reallocate it and use what you already have. And that can be very attractive to get leadership buy-in. Like, oh, I don't have to pay extra for this and we can get this much out of it. Great, let's do it. So there's a lot of different ways that you can speak the language of leaders. If you are that leader, great. Then you probably already know this. And you can also speak the language of budgets. Just like we mentioned, we don't have the budget till we can be smarter with our budget. Maybe you need to rethink your total reward strategy and invest in something more impactful, something that gives you a lot for a smaller investment. For example, like recognition. Awardco is a recognition company. We always like to recognize the good and do employee recognition and total rewards and tie them together. And recognition doesn't have to be monetary a lot of the time, and it can provide a great benefit. Yeah, so that's one way that you can do that. You can consolidate efforts, apps, initiatives. You can tie them together and put it under one area. That can often provide a lot of benefits. I think the main question is, can you afford not to invest in employee engagement with better total rewards, especially in this economy? I would love both of your thoughts on that. Michelle, what do you think?
I think that you have to. It's the only way to keep people engaged, especially since after the pandemic, people want to know and they want the workforce to change. They want it to improve. I think that it was like an ultimate reset for companies to see that, oh, maybe work can be done remotely, or maybe, there are, more 10-hour days and then you have a longer weekend. I think that the pandemic really allowed companies to really just refigure that. But yeah, I think you have to be invested in it, or you won't have employees invested in your product.
Yeah.
What comes to mind when I see this slide is a quote from one of our customers, right? Maybe we can't say their name, but they're large chicken sandwich company nationwide and known for exceptional service. They said something that I thought was really interesting, which was, we don't track a lot of engagement closely because employee recognition is the right thing to do. So they took the opposite approach of like, yes, we'd like data, but even absent data, this is the right thing to do for our employees, to tell them that we appreciate them and we value them. Now they're getting the returns on that. I can guarantee you that. But that's where kind of I land. Yes, we need to pitch this to our leaders. Yes, we need to get buy-in. And using these strategies that we just showed you, you can do that. But rewards and recognition pushes us up above those expectations that are baseline, and it really creates a culture of belonging and engagement that just standard comp and benefits doesn't provide.
Absolutely. And I think the pandemic, like you mentioned, Nichelle, taught us that people are really what's important. And talking about what that as yet unnamed organization said, that's just the right thing to do. Not every organization may have that luxury to say that it's just the right thing to do and to be able to do it. But I think that those that are able to find a huge return from that.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we'd like to turn it over to you. If you have any questions, please pop into the Q&A. Questions for Nichelle, questions for Sam. Let us know what you're thinking about and how we can kind of address some of those concerns. We have a little bit more to share, so we're going to continue to go through that just briefly, but please start sending us your questions so we can answer those. So another way that you can speak the language of leaders is understand the ROI of total rewards. This is something we went over already: lower turnover, raise productivity, etc. You can make a plan to reframe how you and your organization views transactional work. Humans can become a shared resource, maybe a true human resource, where you're sharing between organizations and things like that. You're not hoarding your resources. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting take that I spoke to someone about earlier over LinkedIn. But you can reframe how you think of total rewards, how they're expected. Are they really rewarding? How can you convey that value? And then you can speak the language of leadership and reinvest what you have. Speak that language of budgets. So we have a couple of questions here. We'll get to one before we toss it back over to Amberly. But the question being, what can I do now to improve my total rewards if I don't have the budget?
I think we kind of addressed this a little bit earlier of, what do you currently have? And, are your employees aware of it? But most importantly, what do you currently have that you can just make that just shine? Mm-hmm. And obviously, if it's we just have a generic health plan or whatever, that's still a benefit that is going to, improve anyone's, ability. But yeah, I think just what do you have and how can you make that shine?
Yeah. Thank you.
I think of training. And obviously I think of rewards and recognition because that's who we are. But we often say that non-monetary recognition is just as powerful as monetary recognition. And it's true. That the feeling of being valued and the feeling of being seen and contributing to the overall success of your company doesn't need to have a dollar value attached.
Yeah.
So, without budget to invest in a tool for automation and things like that, it might be a little bit tougher, but you can still do that. And how you might be able to do that is training managers on an individual basis. And when, everybody likes to be recognized in different ways. Some it's public, some it's private. But when somebody pulls me aside and says, hey, I saw what you did last week. That was really impressive. Thank you for putting in all the effort on that. It's noticed, and we're super grateful for you. I float the rest of the day when I get that. And I know not everybody's that sincere, and personalities differ. But good training doesn't cost anything other than the time to develop it or to give it. You can do that regardless of budget if you can get buy-in on that training.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for that. That's really great. So we're running up against time here, but we want to thank you for attending this webinar. Please feel free to contact us via LinkedIn. You can find myself, Bronson Dameron, or Sam Stroman, or Nichelle Yazzie, and you can continue this conversation on LinkedIn. Let us know what you're thinking about, what troubles you're encountering, and we would love to chat with you, so please feel free. But thank you for attending. We hope you have a great day, and we'll toss it back to Amberly with HRE.